Hey y'all, I'm back. Welcome back to the channel, Inside the Iron Pots. I named my channel Inside the Iron Pot because it was hard growing up. So things that happen, within our family just remind me of something hard. So I said, you know what, Inside the Iron Pot. Also, I wrote a book about my family. It's 335 pages long, and it's basically starts like in 1890 something with my mother's parents. And it comes all the way up to 1987 when my older sister got killed. But I named that book Inside the Iron Pot too. So my page is called Inside the Iron Pot, also the book. And I'm going to put chapter 1 on my YouTube page at some point. But yeah, I just forgot. I wanted to let y'all know about that part. But um, mainly the things I'm talking about within my channel is trying to explain how, me as well as other black people, I'm sure, how we came from, ancestors being slavery all through Jim Crow, the lunch counter sit-ins, racial tensions, hanging, lynching, this, that, the other, all the bad stuff, into having some kind of rights and being able to vote and being raised through that era. Like, take for instance, I bet you some of you guys watching right now think when Martin Luther King got killed, it was such a long time ago. It seemed to you like 100 or so years ago, but it wasn't. I was about 8 years old when he got killed. I was here when Martin Luther King got killed. I was here when John F. Kennedy got killed. I lived through a couple of riots, the 1967 riots in Detroit, through the riots they had in Los Angeles with Rodney King. I was living in Lomita, California then. Um, so it's a lot that, I want to talk about. And then me being able to explain somewhat of my family history and the dysfunction and, alcoholism and fights and lockups, being in police custody, my mother, sister, brothers, all of us. I've been to jail too. Uh, and then, one of the things in our family that was real big with the dysfunction was alcoholism. Um, my mother had 10 kids. She drank. All 10 of us drank. All 10 of us did some kind of drug, as I said before. Um, we did a lot of stuff individually. Uh, but right now, it's only 5 of us left now. So, I'm just speaking on me. And some of the other things that people might not know that somebody would call dysfunction, professional, people have given names and definitions of it. So alcoholism is one, gambling addictions, having children out of wedlock, mental and physical abuse is a part of dysfunction, communication within the family, how you raise your kids and the abuse that you put them through by giving them whoopings, thinking you discipline them. Mentally, that can bother somebody for years, all the way into adulthood. And I got my share of whoopings too. Um, so I'm just telling you guys that type of stuff to help you understand, who I am and why I'm telling my stories like I am. Uh, Also, one of the things I wanted to say growing up was not all bad. We lived in a lot of places in Detroit, which I think I've told you guys that I was raised on the east side of Detroit. And as far back as I can remember, from like age 3 or 4, we lived on Concord Street 3 separate times growing up. We lived right off of Gratiot in this 2-family flat where we used to have to go up the back stairs up there, but it was too small, so we moved in the next block on the same street, Concord, off of Gratiot, and we moved in the side-by-side duplex. And it was this couple, older couple, black lady and her husband, my mother and all 10 of us, and we had to move out of there because my older sister, who was probably like 17 or so, was messing with the lady's husband. So the lady throwed us out. We had to get out of there. We ended up moving down across Verner on Concord, between Verner and Kercheval, I believe. And we lived there the longest that I know of. And that was the address for that house was 2221 Concord. I remember some of the addresses, some of them don't. I don't. That was 2221 Concord. We stayed there. A lot of craziness happened at that house. When we moved from there, we moved to Harper, 9533 Harper Street. We lived on Harper, about 1 block from Gratiot, right where Gratiot and Harper meets. We lived a block off of there. and it was just a lot there too. I was about 12 when we moved from there. We moved to Marcus Street. I don't remember the exact numbers for the address, but we moved on Marcus between St. Cyril and Van Dyke. And we lived there till I was about 14, maybe 15. Then we moved down Van Dyke to Wisner Street, near between like Lynch Road and Nevada, off of Van Dyke on Wisner. That's one of the streets where my older sister, who was messing with the lady's husband on Concord, met this white guy who was I think he was the weatherman for Channel 4, named Sonny Elliott. And it was a bar down the street from our house on Wisner. And I think he was a pilot, or I don't know what reason he was at that bar, but I think he was or he rode in the helicopters for the weather or whatever it was. My sister ended up meeting him at the bar at the corner of our street. And I guess you could call him her sugar daddy or whatever. And he used to come to our house and buy food and drinks and stuff, give my mother money, told my sister off pretty good. And we had fun when Sonny Elliott was around. White guy, you can look him up. Anyway, so we lived on Wisner, and we moved. We didn't probably stay there a whole year. We ended up moving to the Jeffries Projects. And I don't remember the exact number, the address there, but it was on 4th Street off of 3rd and Temple, near Masonic Temple near downtown. And we lived in the Jeffrey Projects for probably 1 year. I was 15, and I had my Sweet 16 supposedly party there. And we hadn't been there that long. I only really knew the girl that lived across the grass, and I knew this other girl that lived a couple of doors down, and a couple of other people. But my mother and sister gave me a Sweet 16 party there in our project house, or whatever you call them. And it had to be over 100 people in that place. And I probably knew about 10. And me and the 2 girls that I knew, we all had on long evening gowns that touched the floor, dressed and dialed up, and everybody else came as they were. And that was a big old to-do. It was funny. Anyway, so we lived in the Jeffrey Projects. We moved from there. We moved to Belvedere Street over by McClellan. That house was terrible. My older sisters and brothers had moved out, years prior or whatever. But it was still me, my brother Junior, my brother Ari, my sister Brenda would come and go. My mother, my sister Joyce and her kids and all that. And I think that house had 3 bedrooms, but it was like 7 or 8 of us in there. Anyway, that house on McClellan was terrible. We had so many mice. The house should have been tore down and shoveled away and threw in a landfill. But we didn't have nowhere to go, so we moved in there. It was so many mice in that place that me and my 2 brothers, we used to take chairs, take them in the kitchen and set the chairs in the floor. We used to get in the chairs on our knees and be real still and quiet. And when we sitting there, didn't take about a minute or 2, mice would come from behind the refrigerator, behind the cabinets, out of the cabinets, back of the refrigerator, on the side. Everywhere there was an opening in that kitchen, mice would be out. Hundreds of them. And if we moved or screamed, they would, all you hear is them running. And that house, my brother Junior ended up catching spinal meningitis. It almost killed him. He laid up in the bed sick. My mom and them, black people don't go to the hospital real quick, especially back then. He laying up in there, his head going back, he folding up and not eating, not drinking water, not getting up to go to the bathroom or nothing. He just dying. We didn't know. But I guess she took him to the hospital. Come to find out, the hospital, I think it was Herman Kiefer we went to. I'm not sure. But whatever hospital it was, when we went down there, they didn't tell me, but we all went. And I'm thinking we going to support my brother Junior and all that stuff. And I keep looking around because I'm parked up here in the parking lot at a grocery store, and there's people everywhere. Anyway, when we got to the hospital, we standing in the room, my mother and sister and my other sisters who had came over and a couple of people. I'm like, dang, Junior must be doing bad. All these people up here. Come to find out, everybody who had been to our house 2 weeks prior to him coming to the hospital had to come and get tested for the spinal meningitis. So I'm standing there looking, and my mother go up. They took a long wooden stick Q-tip. This before COVID. You know, they did that with COVID, I believe. The long Q-tip with the little fuzz on the end. And I'm looking at them do her, stuck that that Q-tip down her nose into her throat and pull it back out. I saw that. I took off running. I ran out that room, ran down the hall, trying to find the exit, stand at the elevator, finna get in the elevator and leave. Two big old orderlies came and got me. A big lady and a guy came and got me and dragged me back in there, and they did that test on me. Everybody had to be tested because of the spinal meningitis. But I didn't have it and nobody else had it and stuff. But that house there was terrible. I think that was Belvedere Street. That was the name of it, Belvedere, off McClellan. After there, we moved to St. Louis for 3 months. We stayed down there for 3 months. And the most of the time we was there, my sister Joyce didn't come, but her 3 kids came. Me, her 3 kids, my brother Junior, and my mother. Because my Aunt Isabel and her husband, that was their house they used to live in, but they had bought a bigger house years prior, and that house was sitting, so they gave it to my mother to live in with us. And while we were there, my mother was always gone. You know, I don't know what it was, but my mother stayed, like catching an ambulance to the hospital or being in the hospital or, you know, threatening a heart attack or whatever it was. But while we was down there, I ended up taking care of my nieces and nephews and my brother and cleaning up and cooking and all that. And my aunt and uncle would come over, you doing a good job and all this and that. I ended up enrolling in school down there, but never went. And then my uncle came to visit at one point, and I convinced my mother to let me leave. So I drove back to Detroit with my Uncle Boog, and that's how I got back here. And after that, she moved back about a couple of weeks later. All of us was back up here. So that was St. Louis. Then we moved to Irvington Street, 19339 Irvington, between State Fair and 7 Mile. And over there, you know, just as much crazy. A lot of police activity, drinking, door wide open. In our houses, nobody never broke in none of our houses, not one time growing up. It could be 2 things. One, our house was the problem house. And, you know, people in the neighborhood already know that. 2, my brothers, especially my brother Pookie and Junior, but Pookie was, I think he had some kind of mental health issue that wasn't diagnosed. Mind you, we talking through the 60s, 70s, and 80s and stuff. So now people diagnosed with all kind of HDH, this, that, the other, depression, anxiety, all kinds of stuff got names. But growing up, we didn't know what was wrong with his saying. He was real brutal. I don't know if I told y'all about when he did a lot of stuff, a lot. But he would take, for instance, if you got a large structure in your neighborhood, he'd go set it on fire. 3, 4, 5 alarm, whatever you want to call it. Big fire. So you know the neighborhood and people going to come out. Everybody's standing around watching the fire, talking to whatever. Firemen and police doing their job. He's at the back of the crowd that's watching the fire with a gun, sticking people up, robbing them. He started the fire to get people to come so he can rob them. I mean, that was his thing. He did that. He did a lot of stuff, a lot of fighting and abuse and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, so we lived on Irvington Street for a few years. And at that time, I met my first boyfriend, so I had moved out. So my mother stayed there. Then she ended up moving in another house that my dad had. And then she moved in the senior citizen building and all of that, all the way down to the nursing home and hospital, and she passed away. But I said all that about us moving and living in so many different places. It affects your children. It affects how they grow up. It affects the way they live and how they turn out in life. Because with me, all of that moving, I went to different high schools. I enrolled in different high schools. I went to Kettering High School. I went to Murray Wright. I went to King. I went to Persian. I went to Osborne. I signed in school in St. Louis. I probably went to sign in day, and the next day I didn't even go. So that was just like I didn't even go to school down there. So I never did graduate from high school. So I went for the GED program stuff. You know, that's where I headed to. And that all that affects how you raise your kid. it makes their life difficult because they have nothing stable. So you got to watch out for that if you got kids. I made sure with my boys, you know, I think we did a pretty good job because they both are good kids, successful. I never went to the high school, middle school, or any school for any kickouts, fights, violations. My two sons didn't have tattoos, uh, no trouble with the law or none of that. I did with my oldest son. He was about 16, I think. We was living in Harper Woods, and you know, the school system over there, when we moved over there, was mostly white folks. So he would come in, it seemed like every few days with something different that I ain't used to with his, you know, the way he talking and acting and whatever. But he did come in with his pants kind of sagging at one point that day. And I'm in the kitchen and he walked through and I looked. I went right behind him and I grabbed his pants on the side of him as he was walking and snatched him to the floor. He was like, "Mama, why you do that? Why you doing all that?" I said, you got belts. Put your belt on. Why are you walking around looking like that? Every time you come in this house, have your pants pulled up. And he did. So I never had that problem. If he did it outside, he did it outside, but he didn't do it at home. So you have to have all eyes on your kids, all your attention when you're having a child. Your life has to change. And you have to think beyond what you want to do and how you are living. So with my mother and my father and family, none of us had structure because how she was raised, she didn't know how, you know, and had all them kids and then just had them. Anyway, so I just want to talk about stuff like that and how, you know, being dysfunctional can just destroy somebody. And if they get their life together, that's a good thing. You know, they work on themselves and find out what the issue is and, you know, don't harp on why, just get yourself together and all that. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of you guys have gone through some of the stuff I mentioned. If you don't know about dysfunction, just look it up and see what falls under it. It's a lot of stuff. Emotional abuse can be dysfunctional. Having babies out of wedlock, like I said, you know, dysfunction. I mean, it's a lot of things. But I want to leave y'all with that right there, and I'll be back with another video in a little while.